Now, there's a cardinal rule that we're going to bring up next, and it is so important, so significant to the success of the PLC process that we want it to be burned into your memory by the time you leave this institute. And here's the cardinal rule. If we're going to empower a group of people to make a really important decision, like what's essential, what are we going to focus our instructional efforts on, we need to take time up front to learn together. So we're going to build shared knowledge, burned into your memory.
I want you to remember that this is called the professional learning community process, not the professional opinion community or debating community. So all throughout the Institute, you're going to have questions pop up. What's the first thing a PLC would do when it comes to writing a common assessment, building a system of interventions, having teams establish a SMART goal? And here's the hint. Every single time that what's the first thing a team would do in a PLC when it comes to making a decision, the answer is always, always, always going to be learn together. Learn together. The first step is always to build shared knowledge, and the assumption here is that if people of good faith have access to the same knowledge base before they make a decision, we increase the likelihood that they're going to arrive at a similar decision. So again, we're going to come back to this. I want to quickly review it. What's the first thing a team would do whenever, right? And the answer is always going to be learn together. So on three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, remember that.
All right. So then the question for this team, as they're getting ready to clarify what's essential for our subject that we're focused on, or this course that all of us teach, what's essential? How are they going to build shared knowledge, and what do they need at their fingertips when they arrive at that collaborative team meeting? Well, we're going to contend the leadership of that process, whether it's the department chair, a team leader, the building principal. The leadership needs to ensure that team has everything they need at their fingertips in order to be successful. So things they might need would consist of copies of their standards documents, state standards, Common Core if it's language arts or math, national standards that apply to that particular discipline. So together we're going to become students of our standards documents. We're also going to be given lots of opportunity for vertical articulation, talking to the teachers in the course or grade level, right above ours, right below ours, so we can make sure our list of what's essential is aligned with what did they learn last year and what do they need to know next year in order to be successful when they enter that next course or grade level, or when we send them off into the workforce or to higher ed. Now, when we started this process, we asked every team of teachers to generate a wish list of skills. I wish the kids would come into our course already knowing how to X, Y, and Z, and math, and reading. And they pass those wish lists down to the team of teachers right below theirs, the grade level right below. And now that team has a framework of prerequisites. What do they need to know when they enter that next grade level in order to be successful? So vertical articulation flows between courses and grade levels, and it should flow between schools within a district. Are the elementary folks talking to middle and middle to high to make sure that we're setting kids up for success at that next level? And you could, of course, add other items to the list, but the point is they're not coming to the room and just arguing and debating about what do I like, what do you like. They're studying together the documents that should be driving their thinking. Doug Reeves, who's done so much work around the standards movement, has provided us with 3 criteria that when teams of teachers apply these criteria to that collaborative study of the standards, it can help them separate what are those essential concepts and skills versus are we being asked to teach some things that aren't really essential? They might be nice to know. And are there some things we've traditionally taught in our course or grade level that we can let go of? We can stop teaching because it's not essential to the kids today, or they learned it last year, they're going to learn it next year. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it this year. So he said to separate essential versus those things on the periphery, ask these 3 questions. First, does this standard have endurance? Is this something our kids are expected to remember forever? Or is this one of those standards that represents a quick fact that they have to memorize for this year's test, and then they'll never see it again? So does it have endurance? Second, is it high leverage? Is this a concept or skill that plays out in multiple areas of the content? Does it cut across the disciplines? Third, is it on that wish list from the team right above ours? Is this a prerequisite for success at the next level?
But let's go back to the slide where they showed all the states that are here. Every one of those states,
15 different states, I
right,
think, right?
and 14 out of the 15, every state except Texas, has already said they're going to adopt the Common Core curriculum. So curriculum experts have already told us these are the most essential things kids should learn. So in those states, clearly you wouldn't want teachers to sit around and talk about what they think kids should learn. All you need to do is give them a copy of the Common Core standards and let them teach. And in Texas, they have their own state standards. So Texas will give them their state standards and tell teachers to go teach. You don't want teachers to sit around and talk about what they believe kids should learn if the curriculum's already been decided.
All right, so what do you think? Is it sufficient just to pass out that Common Core? Is that going to... Have you read the Common Core? Is it crystal clear what every... So here's the point, and you know what the point Rick is trying to get at. We've been famous as educators for passing out documents for decades. Somebody else has written the textbook or the curriculum or generated that list of standards. So we just take that document, make sure everybody has a copy of it, and then say, go teach. And we know that doesn't impact student learning at high levels. What does? When the teachers actually take those documents and become students of them together. Here's what we learned in our school, and it was 12 years ago that we first engaged on this process. More than 25 years ago, I think Rick was leading this process. So kind of a long, sustainable journey that we're talking about here. But even then, very first year of our journey, we had copies of state standards, district curriculum, standards-based report cards, assessment blueprints. They had been in classrooms for years, but they'd never come to a table where teachers were actually talking about them with their colleagues. And so here's what we learned in some of those early meetings. We learned first and foremost that from teacher to teacher to teacher, there had been wildly different interpretations of those standards documents. And because of that, each classroom teacher had been placing different levels of importance on each standard based on their understanding of what that standard was. And because of that, of course, pacing from class to class, even at the same grade level, had been all over the board. One teacher would spend 3 weeks, colleagues spent 2 days on the same standard. And of course, because of that, they were assessing in isolation in their isolated classrooms. They never came together and said, how do we know if our kids are learning X? Because we're teaching X at totally different times and at different levels of rigor. So they were assessing different times, different ways. Those are 4 really good reasons not to skip this step. No matter how well written you think those standards documents are, people need to talk about them and become students of them together. But there's a 5th reason that trumps these 4.
No matter how good the Common Core curriculum is, it will have absolutely no impact on student achievement unless teachers own it and are committed to teaching it. And if you want people to be committed to any decision, you have to engage them in the decision-making process. That's what Stephen Covey tells us. You can't just give them somebody else's decisions. They've got to be engaged too. How many of you think you have a district curriculum right now? Because Bob Marzano would say none of you have a district curriculum. He says in every district there are 3 curricula at work each and every day. The first is the intended curriculum. This is what someone else has said we intend for kids to learn. Maybe it's this national committee that's articulated the Common Core, or your state Department of Education that's articulated state standards, or the assistant superintendent for curriculum who's developed your curriculum guide for your district, or a team of teachers that worked on it over the summer. But somebody else has said this is what we intend for kids to learn. Marzano says there's a second level of curriculum happening every day, though, and that's the implemented curriculum. And that's what actually gets taught when the door gets closed. Now, the Common Core Committee had the authority to articulate the intended curriculum. They had all the power to articulate the intended curriculum. Who's got the power when it comes to the implemented curriculum? Every classroom teacher every day, making decisions about what am I going to teach, what will I not teach today. The third level of curriculum is the attained curriculum. That's what the kids actually learn. What Marzano tried to answer in his research is how can you have the biggest impact on the attained curriculum? And one of the factors that had the most significant impact on the attained curriculum was to make sure that the implemented curriculum, what gets taught when the door gets closed, is guaranteed. It doesn't matter which third grade teacher you get in this school, because we guarantee that your student will be taught this skill. And it doesn't matter which biology teacher you get in this high school, the team guarantees your kid will be taught this skill. It's guaranteed and it's viable. Viable means the curriculum can be taught in the amount of time you have to teach it. Now, the only way that you can guarantee the curriculum is going to be taught is if it's the teachers themselves who are making the guarantee. They're the ones who implement the curriculum. Your central office cannot guarantee every kid's going to be taught this skill. But if we're a third grade team and we say, so do we promise then we're going to teach main idea in this first unit? You promise, you promise, you promise. We all commit to that. Now we've got a guaranteed curriculum. Are any of you hearing us say, ignore the Common Core, don't pay any attention to state standards, don't look at your district curriculum guide, they're irrelevant? Anybody hearing us say that? We're saying exactly the opposite. We're saying they're so important and significant that they should be taken down off the shelf, dusted off, and studied together. We engage in collective inquiry. We learn together about what do these documents say, and then as a team, we make decisions in terms of what will we teach and when will we teach it.
One of our colleagues, he's also the co-author of Learning by Doing, Dr. Thomas Maney, a former superintendent of a district right outside of Chicago. And on the very first day, first year that they were beginning this journey district-wide, they would typically have a convocation for all the teachers across the district to come together and have a speaker to come in and work with them for that first day. They devoted that first day to grade level meetings district-wide. So all the kindergarten teachers, first grade, second grade, all the way up the district. And they each had a room in which to convene. And they spent the entire day together, and the focus of that day was to become students together of their standards documents so they could identify those essential outcomes. In each room, they posted 3 pieces of paper on the walls. One said keep. What are those standards we need to keep in our curriculum because they are critically essential? Another said drop. Have we been teaching things traditionally that we should stop teaching? Let's drop it from the curriculum. Are there some things we need to add? It's not in the state standards, but this team of teachers says it's important. Let's add this to our curriculum. So he modeled a process grade by grade, keep, drop, create, so that they could begin the journey of having a district-wide guaranteed curriculum. And then he sent all the people back to their school sites, and every unit now, they're getting ready to teach a new unit. Keep, drop, create. Are we clear on what we need to keep in this unit? What should we drop? It's not. And so they use that process over time. It's written about in Learning by Doing, so you can get a little more information there. But it was a process they used for guaranteed curriculum. Now, grade by grade on their district website for every course, art, music, PE, reading, writing, math, doesn't matter. All those essentials are posted on that website, crystal clear across the community. This is what the most essential things your students will be learning.